So this whole episode is all about a feeling, and
Yes.
hearing Doug say sex makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's why I didn't mention it there.
Well, I'm gonna put it in there. Yes, they absolutely in the Disney version.
Kick it.
Welcome to Splat Attack, a podcast honoring the slime-filled past. I am your jolly old nutcracker, Manny.
And I'm your happy old tree fluffer, Alex. And hey, Manny,
Yes?
looks like we've got ourselves an interesting episode. Also, for the first time in Splat Attack history, do you know what that is?
Oh, I know this. I think with the you carry the three with the situation with the lunar eclipse and the potatoes. Yeah, we're putting these two episodes up against each other in a versus battle. Disney's Doug versus Nickelodeon's Doug in Doug's Christmas Story and Doug's Secret Christmas.
Right, you are, Manfred. Well, since we've gotten to know each other since known each other better over the years, I feel like I'm much more comfortable with a battle between you and I.
Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable in my position. So, which one would you like to take?
Well, Nickelodeon, of course.
Fine, I'll take the Disney. And
Well,
I see someone coming in the ring.
yeah, I mean, if you and I are going to be going head to head, we have to have a guest judge. So,
Oh, yeah.
joining us for this episode is April Alvarado. How are you, April?
I'm good, guys. How about you?
We are fabulous.
Doing good.
April has been on the show before. For those of you Slimesters who missed it, there was a Patreon exclusive that was talking about the Angry Beavers New Year's episode, and April was part of that. And we always have fun with April. So I think this is the first time that we've gotten her on the main timeline, which I'm really excited about because April's cool, and I want to share her with all of you. I don't want to hog her to the patrons. So thank you for joining us once again.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here again and get to judge this versus.
What is your opinion of Nickelodeon Doug?
So to be completely honest with you, I had forgotten that there was the two. And when you had talked to me about this, I was like, what in the world is he talking about? Like, and so I had to go back and double check the episodes because to be completely honest with you, they kind of run together to me. Like I can never in my mind go, "Oh, that was Nickelodeon," as opposed to that was Disney.
It's
They
slight differences.
very
Yeah.
slight. And just being younger and everything, I didn't it was just on. Or it was on a station. It didn't matter if it was the right station or not. It didn't matter if it was 20 or 25. So
Manny, what was you said that both of these episodes are very near and dear to your heart, but when it comes to Doug, just in general, Nickelodeon or Disney, what is your opinion of them? Because we've never really talked Doug before.
We never have. Doug is just a really special Nicktoon. It's definitely like the most wholesome of the bunch, I would say, if you consider Rugrats a little bit, but Doug is definitely a more wholesome feeling. I really like both. I don't have any issues with the Disney Doug or the Nickelodeon Doug. But if we were talking something easy to put on sometimes, I would consider Nickelodeon the version that I would choose because there's something better about these two act one and act two stories rather than just like a whole 22 minutes of a certain story. So sometimes they feel a little stretched out, but when you could always like put in the bite-sized version of the show, it's great to just turn on and just like, oh, this is fun. Oh, the episode's over already. So that's definitely what I would choose.
For Nickelodeon Doug, and I've said this before whenever Brett and I would talk about it, Nickelodeon Doug was one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows, period. I absolutely love Nickelodeon Doug. When it moved to Disney, and this is something you hear a lot with fans, especially 90s Nick fans, the Disney Doug sucks. Now that's I'm not saying it sucks. I'm saying that's what people would say. Oh my gosh, Disney's version sucked. The Nickelodeon was so much better. And I don't fully disagree, but I don't fully agree either
I'm the same way. That's the thing.
because I can't remember a single episode of Disney Doug because I didn't really watch it. Um, this was one of those instances where, as a kid, I watched Nickelodeon Doug all the time. Loved Nickelodeon Doug, and then I saw this Doug wasn't playing on Nickelodeon anymore, and I didn't know why. It's just gone. So okay, they got new programming. That's what I figured. Nickelodeon. It's been on Nickelodeon for a few years. That's what they do. They get rid of a show and have new ones. It's fine. And then I saw that it was going to be like in the TV guide because I would watch Saturday morning cartoons, and Doug is going to be on ABC. What's it doing on ABC? And I thought that they just were going to play reruns on ABC because that's what Nickelodeon did. I mean, that's what they did with Beetlejuice and Tiny Toon Adventures and so many other cartoons that they would just take those shows and play reruns on Nickelodeon. So
That I didn't know.
I thought, okay, well, I guess that's what they're doing. And I went to sat down in my bed to watch Disney's One Saturday Morning, and the song kicked in, and I was like, "What is this?
It's a different song.
This is this is not Doug. What is this?
It's Doug in the multiverse.
It kind of is. It's a weird universe.
This
There's
is
no
a
do
weird."
do 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 do. There's da 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 da. It's weird.
And that was it. It was different. It wasn't bad. It was different. And I thought, okay, well, I can get behind this. Okay, fine. Doug's got a little bit of a different, the animation style's a little different. He looks a little different, a little different. Okay. And then I hear Doug talk.
Dear Journal, tonight they lit the tree in Bullseye Park. That means Christmas is just a week away.
And it's not Billy West. And I'm like, okay, this really feels Uncanny Valley. I don't like this not being the Doug that I'm familiar with. And then I just didn't watch it. I didn't really give it a chance as a kid because it was just different. Now, a lot of Nickelodeon fans, and I want to put this out there, a lot of Nickelodeon fans will get so upset that why did Disney ruin Doug? Why did Disney do this to Doug? We had the opportunity to talk with Geraldine Laybourne, who was the CEO of Nickelodeon. She left Nickelodeon and went to Disney. And she had the intention to do for Disney what she did on Nickelodeon. She wasn't able to do that. And not because it was Geraldine Laybourne, but because it's Disney. She didn't have the freedom at Disney. Imagine that she did over at Nickelodeon. But one of her favorite shows that she helped produce and one of the favorite people that she worked with was Jim Jenkins. And she loved Doug. So when she went to Disney and she was going to start the One Saturday Morning block, she wanted Jim. That's why Disney got Jim Jenkins. They offered him more creative freedom and more budget and more episodes for his show. And they gave it to him. Who wouldn't take that?
I mean, it's true because even Jim said himself, if he would have stuck with Nickelodeon, the budget just kept on getting bigger and bigger, and they couldn't afford the animation anymore. So that's why he kind of was like, I don't want to end the show, but I kind of have to.
Yeah. So there's really nothing wrong. They didn't do anything bad. Disney didn't do anything bad to it. He got to do more of what he initially wanted to do. Now you can take that as a good and bad thing. You could even go that original Star Wars trilogy
Oh,
when
oh
George
boy.
Lucas had people to do what he wanted, and then the prequels where George could do whatever he wanted, and everyone just saying, "Yes, it's genius, it's genius."
That could be taken either way.
Yeah.
You could that could have been the case with Jim. He didn't have people to help filter things out, and he could just do whatever he wanted. Now, I don't mean that to sound ill of Jim, because Jim is wonderful, and I just think Disney Doug gets a bad rep from Nickelodeon fans because Disney did something different. Disney really didn't do something different. Jim did something different. Jim got to do what he initially wanted to do, and it's not bad. It's really not bad. It's just we were kids, and ooh, it's different. Go watch it again, and give it a fair shake.
That, and I think as kids, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I always felt that there was the Nickelodeon kids and the
Hmm.
Disney kids.
There
There was
was.
such a
There was.
separation. It was almost like the whole NSYNC Backstreet Boys thing. Like you watched one or the other. You really didn't focus on both of them. And those who did actually get some of both were kind of, we were the oddballs because we try to talk with the other friends and they're like, well, what channel is that on? Well, Nickelodeon. Well, I only watch Disney, or vice versa.
There really
Mhm.
was. It's like the Disney kids were a total different group, and Nickelodeon kids were like, oh, well, you're the outsider group. You could stick with them. So it's like there was definitely a segregation between fans at that time.
Mhm.
So it's funny how you mentioned that because that is definitely true. At least I noticed that too growing up.
So this Disney Doug, I haven't really seen a full episode of it, and I wanted to go back and watch it again as an adult. I just haven't had the time. Like so many shows, I just haven't had the time to check it out yet. And I'm glad that we got to do this because I wanted to check this out. I had no idea there was a Christmas episode. This was actually Manny's suggestion for this episode.
Yeah, because I revisited the Disney Doug a few years ago because I haven't seen it in a long time, ever since getting Paramount Plus years ago and stuff. But the funniest thing is I never got to see the premiere. So I saw the premiere on Disney Plus, and the first episode of the Disney Doug, it literally changes everything. Doug, Patty, Skeeter, they're all wearing the same Nickelodeon outfits. They mention the Beats, they mention the Honker Burger, but here's the twist. It goes away. The Beats break up, the Honker Burger turns into a different restaurant. Um, Roger gets rich because they build the new middle school where his trailer park home was. And so he gets all this money, and Connie changes her look, but that episode is completely about change. And I've always wanted to know, like, why did Jim write it that way instead of just like gradually changing?
Mhm.
So it's a really interesting watch, and I'm like, oh, this is really neat to see. So I sat down and I watched it, and I was like, wow, it's still good. It's different, but it's still good, in my opinion.
For this episode, obviously, we're not talking about the premiere. We're talking about Christmas.
Christmas.
And
Christmas.
I mean, my backdrop is very Christmassy. I mean, look at this. Doesn't this just scream holiday joy to you? For those of you who are listening and you don't, April, how would you describe my backdrop here?
Um, well, anytime I see a dog, I'm always excited because it's a dog. Like, I mean, I'm like squirrel with dogs or cats, honestly. And so, and now you're petting it.
Well, I mean, he does look sad, so
He
I
He
think
looks
a
does.
rub,
sad.
I think a rub in the snout actually makes him nice and
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah, exactly. He's looking through the fence like, can I come play, please?
We have a bit of dog prison behind me, and there's a reason for that. Because nothing screams holiday joy like the dog pound, and I can't wait to get into it.
Alrighty then. So you want to get started?
Yeah, let's get started. Manny, what are the categories that April is going to be judging on?
Okay, the categories are going to be story, main characters, use of Christmas theme, sentimental feeling, oh, and lasting appeal.
Well, before we get into the discussion for everything, let's give a bit of the basic episode synopsis. So, for the Doug's Christmas Story, which is the Nickelodeon one that I'm going to be defending, is from season 4, episode 10. The air date was December 12th, 1993, and was written by Ken Scarborough.
And I'll be defending season 5, episode 15, Doug's Secret Christmas. Original air date was December 14th, 1996. Also written by Ken Scarborough.
All right, well, we are going to defer to our judge so you can take the reins and tell us what to do.
All right. Well, before we get into our category fives, those who know, I'm here in Florida, so let's get back into Doug's. Let's get started with the actual true synopsis of these episodes. So, Alex, let's start with you with the Nickelodeon one.
Doug's Christmas Story for Nickelodeon begins with a cold morning, and Lucky Duck Lake is frozen over since Bluffington Elementary is closed for winter break. The kids are enjoying a nice game of hockey. However, they are unaware of what danger lurks ahead with a thin ice sign that falls into the water. The pine cone puck gets hit and then gets shoved into a far area around thin ice, and BB decides to go and get it. However, Porkchop notices that is where the thin ice sign was. Trying to stop her, Porkchop goes into his last warning and tries to pull her back to safety, but bites her leg in the process, trying to get her out of the water. BB screams in agony as the kids tell Doug Porkchop is attacking BB. Back at home, Porkchop is trying to tell Doug what he was trying to do, and unfortunately, Doug can't figure it out and is thinking that Porkchop was just clowning around. So he scolds Porkchop and sends him back to his igloo outside. As that happens, Judy comes in and tells Doug to help her go Christmas shopping. While they shop, the unofficial Mayor Bob, vote for me, is hosting a call-in radio show since he lost the election, and he receives a call from a concerned citizen asking if he has heard about the girl being attacked by that dog. Bob White reacts stunned and is getting the word out. When Doug and Judy return home, they and their parents are caught off guard when they find Porkchop being arrested and taken away to the city pound. They then receive a letter saying that Bill Bluff, BB's dad, is pressing charges against Porkchop. Doug then later gets a petition to have Porkchop set free. However, hearing this news, the citizens of Bluffington don't want to help or be involved in any way and interfere with their Christmas plans. So he later goes to the hospital to talk to BB about this pork chop attack story and how it's gotten out of hand, but Bill refuses to let Doug talk to her as she is much too traumatized. Doug is trying to tell him that Porkchop never intended to hurt her, but Bill won't listen to it and says, "That's the court to decide." Feeling lost, Doug goes into his imagination to call on Race Canyon, Quailman, and my dude, Smash Adams, to help find out a plan. Smash suggests high-tech gadgetry, which gives Doug the idea to visit Al and Moo. They have a smoke bomb disguised as a cupcake to give to the guard and make a quick escape. So Skeeter and Doug head to the pound, and Skeeter tries distracting the guard by acting like he's hurt, while Doug looks for Porkchop. Unfortunately, the guard takes a bite out of the cupcake only to have the smoke pour out of it. Boom, all over the place. Doug gets caught as he found Porkchop, and both him and Skeeter are thrown out. We now enter the saddest part of this episode. Doug feels hopeless and imagines every Christmas he and Porkchop had, except for this Christmas, where he will be visiting Porkchop's grave, and then Doug cries. Porkchop's trial happens on, of all dates, Christmas Eve, and later, after so many experts explain how Porkchop is a psycho killer, BB takes the stand to explain her side of the story, and it is then revealed that she is in a wheelchair and her leg casted up. Doug was surprised, and we go back into his imagination where Doug decides to take care of the situation himself when Race, Quailman, and Smash can't come to an agreement and argue with each other. Porkchop is trying to explain to Doug what really happened, and noticing this, Doug asks the judge if they can go to the lake and see what Porkchop is trying to say. The judge is against the idea of trying to get everyone out because it's Christmas and they all have families to go to. Maybe you shouldn't have done this on Christmas Eve. Doug then explains how Porkchop is part of his family, but how Porkchop helped so many people in the community, from babysitting, baking cookies, bringing hammer and nails, saving someone's hair. The list goes on. And even to go on to say that he was helping the judge's daughter walk. Think about that for a second. The dog teaching a person how to walk. That's hysterical to me. Porkchop needs their help now, and that did it. The judge sends everyone to the lake. At the lake, BB uses the crutches to go to the spot where Porkchop bit her, and Porkchop begins freaking out and starts to chase after her, but he is held back. Bill tells everyone that the dog is trying to attack my daughter again. Just then, BB falls through the thin ice again. Fortunately, Porkchop breaks free and rescues her. Finally, everyone figures out what he was trying to do, and Porkchop is considered a hero by everyone in town. What happened then? In Bluffington, they say, Mr. Bluff's heart grew 3 sizes that day, as he himself hosted a Christmas dinner for all the dogs in the pound and decided to toast to Porkchop. We get a Christmas card from the funnies wishing us, the viewers, a happy holiday. End of episode.
Well, let's go ahead and get this Disney, 3 years later, Christmas episode synopsis.
All right. We open at the lighting of the Christmas tree at Bullseye Park, which means Christmas is just a week away. We look and see how the others in Bluffington celebrate their holiday. Like Skeeter, stocks up on hot chocolate, marshmallows, and holiday TV schedules, even though he's seen them a gazillion times, including the one where the poor dog goes to jail. Familiar. Doug goes into his traditions, such as putting up decorations in his room after Thanksgiving. The family putting up the tree, visiting Grandma Funny. However, before everything comes is the Christmas list. Doug is wondering if he should ask for inline skates or a dirt bike, but he comes up with just asking for both. He walks downstairs to give his parents his list, sees Judy giving her mom breathing exercises for the baby who was about to arrive. Meanwhile, Phil, Doug's dad, wants to give him some fatherly advice about where babies come from. Though the long and short story is that his dad is telling him that with the new baby coming, there's not going to be a lot of time for presents. Disappointed, Doug holds up the list behind him as Judy grabs it and says it's just a list of baby names. As she sarcastically reads and says, Dirt Bike? Oh, that's a great name, but I prefer Cleopatra. Meanwhile, in BB Bluff Middle School, Fentruck pops up and scares Doug. As Fentruck says, this is the scariest holiday of the year. Roger quickly tries to debunk this theory as he says, no, this is Halloween, not Christmas. But according to Fentruck, this is how Christmas is celebrated in Yakistonia. As the school day ends, Doug walks and takes a detour to look for the perfect tree for the family. Doug runs back home, excited to tell the family about the trees. Sadly, only to find a fake tree sitting up on the coffee table. Doug's parents are headed to the birthing classes and tells Doug to put the tree up together and make it say Merry Christmas. Doug is just looking at it saying it doesn't even say the word tree. However, after the last day of school, Skeeter and Doug head to the mall for some last-minute Christmas shopping. Doug is looking for some nice earrings for Patty. However, Skeeter pulls his attention to him as Skeeter finds a Christmas tree-shaped waffle iron. As Skeeter says, he thought he wouldn't find a new one after he replaced the old one because he made a huge diorama of the Battle of Mount St. Buster. Skeeter is a bit disappointed because it costs too much and he can't afford it. But Doug, being Doug, he offers to help him. Unfortunately, this means that Doug is short on funds now. But he decides to make something for Patty instead. He made little earrings for her, painted them, wrapped them up just in time for him to meet for their gift exchange. Patty absolutely loves them, and she hands Doug his present. As Patty heads for her grandparents' house, Doug heads back home to feed BB's fish. Though, since Roger lives next door to BB, he looks and sees that there's a Christmas party happening next door. Also, walking through Chalky's house, seeing his family all together playing football, he yearns for a traditional old family Christmas. As Doug walks back home, expecting to go to Grandma Funny's house, Phil is still at the mall, Doug's mom is in pain, and unfortunately, they're not going to make it to Grandma's that year. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Doug is in his room saying to himself, if you don't even get a tree, hang lights, or sing songs, does it even count as Christmas? Doug imagines his family just sitting in the kitchen table with a clock ticking, and then Phil all of a sudden says, oh yeah, Merry Christmas. Determined to not make that happen, Doug heads over to the Christmas tree lot. In true Charlie Brown fashion, he gets his hands on a cute small tree, no charge. It's now Christmas Day. Doug didn't care that nobody cared about Christmas anymore, so they had their own secret Christmas in his room. Porkchop gives Doug a new journal, and Doug gave Porkchop a world's greatest dog mug, and Porkchop can't hide his excitement. As Doug waits for anyone who wants Christmas to go up to his room, he frustratedly walks downstairs to find that there's no one in the house. Phil calls Doug from the hospital. They thought they had another week, but with all the rush and confusion, they all kind of left Doug. Doug walks into the hospital room to find his mom and his new baby sister. When asked what her name is, they decide to go up the names that Doug and Judy came up with. Meet Cleopatra Dirt Bike Funny. Embarrassed, Judy and Doug faint. Turns out Christmas came a little late for the funny house, but the moral is, no matter what day it is, either the 25th or the 27th, Christmas is still more like a feeling. Everyone there, Mr. Valentine offering Christmas tree-shaped waffles, Roger and Friend Truck still arguing about if this is Halloween or Christmas, but in Yakistonia, Halloween is when the giant bunny comes and hides the eggs. Roger just falls and just hits the floor, and he says, like, I give up. As Doug heads out for a diaper run, Patty hands Doug his present, as he forgot to open it due to all the craziness. Patty made Doug a scarf, as she hates knitting, but it's for Doug, so it was well worth it. As they hug, he blushes and runs out with Porkchop to get some diapers. As the snow falls, he shouts for all of Bluffington to hear, Merry Christmas! End of episode.
So this whole episode is all about a feeling. And hearing Doug say sex makes me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, so all that talk about fish and vampires and the internal combustion engine, you really wanted to talk to me about sex?
Oh, yes.
What? What?
You know, Disney used to be a little bit more like raunchy in a sense. Like if you go back and look at the DComs that like the first of the Disney Channel original movies, some of the original TV shows and everything, they weren't all giggles and
And
butterflies.
family friendly. No, it's like
Yeah.
some of them
Well,
were.
I mean, family like squeaky clean white glove family, not there's a little something for everybody, and it can get a little risque. But I mean, there's nothing risque about this. Which I think is awesome. They have a pregnant mom in the show. So few movies and TV shows for kids have a pregnant mom. I can only think of the mom on Emperor's New Groove. That's the only other example I can think of where the mom was pregnant, and um and then yeah, we need to talk about that. He's in, was it junior high, high school? He's at least in one of those, and they I mean they didn't white glove it, but they didn't like make it sound awful either. Just
Because
it's
according to this, he's 12 in this special.
Yeah, and Sam, I'm gonna be having this talk with him between during the summer because he's gonna go from elementary school to junior high, and he's gonna hear these things, and I'm like, I'd rather you learn it from me. So yeah, Phil talking to Doug about this is it tracks, but I never would have thought the word sex was coming out of Doug Funny's mouth on the Disney Channel.
Yeah. It was really surprising for me when I heard it too. So
I could
yeah.
hear it in the Nickelodeon version because I mean you have Sponge saying pissed on Salute Your Shorts at one point.
I'm pissed off because I'm not as smart as I thought I was.
Dad from hell!
You can string the dingleberry garland.
Whoa, Tyson! Holy, you all right?
So I could see them letting it slip, but I absolutely don't never would have thought it would be on Disney.
But also the fact that he knew more than the dad
Yeah.
did too. So
Yeah.
It's funny. You mentioned that on Nickelodeon they use the word pissed, and I didn't understand when I was younger. I didn't know any better, and I think it was Mary Kay and Ashley's "It Takes Two."
Oh no.
There's a spot where I think if I remember correctly, one of them goes pissed miss. And this was like 95 or something like that. And so I was 4 and I was repeating it, and my mom and my dad were not happy about that. And so
well, it's you're just repeating because you didn't know what it was.
yeah, and so it was just sorry, that just rang a bell. One of those things where you like hear something and it's like just immediately like pops
No,
into
we've
your
all
brain.
done it. We've all done it.
Let's start with category 1, story.
If we're gonna look at stories in Christmas theme, I mean we will get a bit more into Christmas later, but uh a lot of Christmas stories uh are sad and freaking depressing. Because a lot of times people will look at this episode, the Nickelodeon episode, and they will say that it's too depressing. Well, I mean, why would they put something like this for Doug of all things? But a lot of the classic Christmas stories are overall mostly depressing things. It's the end of the year. It's cold. People's lives are tight and struggling. I mean, there's the lovers gift story where neither of them can afford to get the other person a gift, so they have to sell something that's important to them and that to get the other person something, but it goes with the thing that they just sold. It's a Wonderful Life. Horrible, not horrible, but awful things keep happening to um his character the whole movie, and then he wants to commit suicide by the end of the movie. And I mean it's
We're gonna turn this thing around. I'm gonna lash on the moon.
Prancer If you want a good depressing Christmas movie, Prancer, Jack Frost, the dad dies at the beginning of the freaking
I
movie.
love Jack Frost though.
And I'm not putting a slight to any of these. I love all these movies, but the point is a lot of these stories are very sad and depressing. So whenever you do a Christmas story for Doug, you can do the happy, cheesy, everything is wonderful and merry that so many Christmas shows do, which and there's nothing wrong with that. But they went for the heartstrings. And if you want real heartstrings, you have to get real emotion. You have to get where connection is. And Doug is not nearly as connected to anyone as he is with Porkchop. And when you sever that relationship, you really cut deep. And that you really start to think very deeply about, well, when it comes to Christmas and Christmas's family, pets are family too. And most people who don't have pets don't fully grasp that. And and how not just a pet, but a person can impact. I mean, you do have the It's a Wonderful Life thing where one person has impacted a lot of different people, which happens in this case to be Pork Chop. But also at the same time, he's still a dog, and they're treating him like a bad dog throughout the entire episode. Because of a misinterpretation, which also happens very much Salem witch trials, which still happens to this day. Boy Who Cried Wolf and all that stuff. So it is a sad story for the most part. And and I'll get a bit more into the Christmas theme later, but for a Christmas story, it makes sense that they want to have it at the end of the year, and who do you want to spend Christmas with the most? Okay, now let's find a way to sever that so that way when you have that reconciliation at the end, it feels earned. And it's not that hokey, cheesy, yay, Merry Christmas, everyone. It's the I'm happy to be with the people I love, and seeing these characters together and spending Christmas together feels like an earned and genuine Merry Christmas.
Well, I definitely I definitely understand that. It's crazy though when you also think about how many of these movies and shows were really so depressing if you look back at it. I mean, we'll get to the Disney side on it here in a second, but like Disney, for instance, like okay, Bambi, bang,
Yeah.
like I mean,
Yeah.
like Fox and the Hound, all of these different, they just pull at the heartstrings. It's almost to where you're you're almost kind of like defensive when watching something that's a holiday themed because you're already like, okay, how 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 bad is it going to hurt me? It's we're trying to watch and be happy and cheery, but then we put ourselves through all of these.
And it's like,
So
oh,
many emotions.
it gets so real, you know?
Yeah, it really does. So definitely understand that. All right, Manny, you're up on the Disney side for the story. How do you feel on that?
I feel like it would relate to a lot of kids, especially if like you're so used to being around your family for, in this case, 12 years. And once once there's a new addition to your family, it could be really hard to take that sometimes. Like I don't have a little sibling or anything, so I don't really relate, but you do have a sense of feeling where it's like we're supposed to be doing these traditions and I want to feel this holiday spirit, but their attention is going with something else. Yeah, I'm going to get a new family member, but we're still going to be doing this, right? Right? So, in true kid fashion, it makes you a little selfish, but it also makes you feel like I'm not dealing with this in the right way, or we're still going to enjoy Christmas even though this is happening. So for this case, Doug is trying his hardest to make sure like he still gets a Christmas of some kind.
Mhm.
Rather like, okay, he still kind of learned the feeling of the season when he had to give money to Skeeter to buy his dad his present. And so he's like, all right, I'm just going to have to make Patty a present. And later on, he wants to pick a tree for the family. And after that, um, he gets the inclination of like, I really want this traditional family Christmas, but then more stuff happens with the baby. They have to go to the baby classes, blah blah blah. And but towards the end, he starts to learn it's the feeling. It doesn't matter what day you celebrate this. It's truly like how you feel inside. You get to celebrate with your friends and your family, and you still get to be happy this time of the season. And I think once Dirt Bike was born, I think he actually realized that
So
and just
stupid. Why? Why? Why is that
It's a
stupid
celebrity name, okay?
I know it's like
Who-
Apple or
I was
something,
gonna
you
say,
know?
who named it? Gwyneth Paltrow?
As soon as that kid was born, Doug started to get the feeling that Alex is dying over there.
It's so stupid.
But it turns out that Doug learned the meaning for the season as he was, walking out to go get diapers for the diaper run. He was like, I'm actually very happy and I actually have a really great life and I can't wait to see what happens next.
All right. So I am going to have some time in between each of these to decide which one wins. So we're going to go ahead onto category numero dos, main character. So obviously, both of these have the same main character. Let's hear about the little differences between each of yours. Because again, one's Disney, one's Nick. So this time, let's start with Manny.
Okay. Well, I would say Doug is played a little more differently in, I would say, the Disney version.
What you
Because
mean? You mean it's not Billy West?
yeah, yeah. Besides the obvious, it's not Billy West. It's someone else. Close, but I feel like it kind of works because kids go through puberty, right? So their voice changes. So
That was a voice crack that I was trying to do, not a disagreement sound.
But other than the obvious, I feel like Doug in this version is a little more confident in himself, and I feel that he definitely knows what he wants and he tries to rule with an iron fist. Like not literally because he's not like full Stalin. He's actually just like he cares about his traditions and he wants to stay doing what he's doing. But like I said earlier, with the new baby coming, he feels like everything's just constantly changing and he just wants some things to stay the same, visiting grandma's house or like getting a big tree for the family. But I feel like he does a lot of growing in this episode. Much like I said earlier about the story, learning that Christmas is just not about yourself, but for everyone else that you celebrate with. So I feel like he grows naturally in this episode.
Now, onto the Nick version.
Well, first of all, when we last left Pork Chop, this is where he was. But we ended with him here, so we're gonna use this because I'm tired of that sad background
That's
for
great.
the remainder of the episode. But I do want to comment on the tree that you were talking about because I feel like Doug was a bit more selfish in the Disney version than he usually is. But and that's not a slight. That's just there were traditions and he
When
didn't
you
want to let them go.
mature, yeah, when you mature,
And yeah, like you said, you're growing. He was growing in the episode. But I remember that moment for me when Doug walked in and he was expecting a nice big real Christmas tree and it was a tiny artificial tree. I remember when I came home and I was waiting to get in my dad's truck and we go to the tree lot and we get a tree and instead I walked in from school and there was a pole, just an empty pole with the stand and I went, "What is that. Like, I dogged my mom on buying a fake tree. I
Really?
was so mad. I
Oh
was
no.
so when Doug was that away in the Disney version, I was like, yeah, that was me. I was absolutely that child who was selfish. It was like, how dare you cheapen yourself and buying a fake tree, says the man, now 39, with 6 artificial trees and not a single real one in my house. So the big difference for the both of these is relatability, because there is a very specific group of people who are going to relate to Doug on the Disney version, because yes, we all have tradition changes, which we're used to when we're adults and we're starting our own thing. But when you're a child or a teenager and you're having a new addition to the family, and then so many things have to change, not just Christmas. The only people who are really going to understand that are older siblings. Um, for my episode, the only people who are really going to fully relate to this are pet lovers. Not everybody is a pet lover. And for those who are not, I feel sorry for you. But the fear of what Doug is experiencing throughout this entire episode is very palpable, even for an animated 24-minute episode, because that's his dog. I mean, that's his companion. We get to see very briefly when he got the dog, when he got Pork Chop as a Christmas gift so many years ago, and we've gone through 3 seasons already of seeing Pork Chop and Doug together. So the whole episode, you just see Doug being persistent and trying to save his friend, and quite literally save his life. I mean, it's not like the Doug and Skeeter episode where Skeeter is moving and then just finds out he's moving in the basement at the end of the episode after he'd said goodbye. And there's been a lot of fantasy episodes, which I also find very interesting in this episode. But there's a lot of fantasy where we see Doug be all kinds of wonderful heroes and would save the day in these amazing fashion. But at the end of the day, it's still a fantasy, and the stakes are not that high. This episode, the stakes are high. Pork Chop did save the day, but no one sees it that way. And Doug knows Porkchop has never behaved this way before. He never would behave this way unless there was a good reason, and trying to get people to understand that, and no one's listening to him because everyone just wants to take things at face value, and no one wants to face anything that is against the grain or makes them uncomfortable, or and just, well, everyone else is saying this is what this is, so that must be what this is, and Doug knows that's not true. So he's fighting a very unjust opinion, and and we know Doug goes to extremes with his imagination, and then we freaking see what Pork Chop is locked in. That was not a fantasy. That was a real huge dog pound that had a place for bad dogs, a place for really bad dogs, and a place for really, really bad dogs, which was a
That
single
was
room,
insane
which
right there.
looked like a dungeon. Didn't look like a jail. Looked like
Mhm.
a dungeon. And
Yeah.
within the room was a box, and then within the box was Pork Chop, who was treated like Hannibal Lecter. It was it was ridiculous. And to see, just to know, I mean, having to see a family or someone you care about in jail, for anyone who's had the opportunity to see that, that's already devastating. Now imagine that being your dog, and or that being or that being someone else that shouldn't be in this situation just because someone started a rumor or a lie. And Doug had to see that, and he had to see something awful, and then to not be allowed the opportunity to love on and console and have some kind of closure, knowing that this might be the the last opportunity you get to see this person. Because yeah, I know it's pork chop, I know it's a dog. The dog taught someone how to walk. Shut up. The Doug went from just happy. The episode starts happy to confused to super super sad, but never really gave up, and until that moment when when no one would come to his aid, but then tried his hand at, well, what did he do for you? What did everyone, he's done so much for so many people because he is family. He's my family. And I love that he did that because usually he doesn't like to stand up. He's afraid to stand up most of the time, even to Roger. And he has to fantasize all the time about how am I going to do this? There was no fear of having to stand up in front of a judge and in front of not really a jury, but a house of people and stand up for his friend. The only thing that he ever really had to do was think about how am I going to do this? How can I possibly save my friend? But once he got it, there was no fear. And he did everything he could respectfully in a court and still managed to. He did save his friend. Doug did come to the rescue in this episode more than he ever has. So he showed a lot of courage in this
Mhm.
episode, which we've never really seen Doug have to do before or since.
I want to piggyback on that for a second, Alex. There is something really magical about watching Doug because you get to see this kid really grow. And
Mhm.
when I was rewatching the series a few years ago, there's a lot of difference between Doug in season 1 and season 3.
Yeah.
Season 3 Doug is like that's like the first time you see various fights with Patty. Like him and Patty are just completely mad at each other throughout that season. And it shows like how much he's grown and how he feels confident within himself. So there's something really great if you ever go back and watch Doug and see that difference in the character. And it truly shows in the Christmas episode. It really shows.
All right, now onto the Christmas themes for both of these. They were both very Christmassy in their own sense, but let's see who can rock this Christmas. All right, Alex, let's take off with you.
So this one is a bit off the beaten path with Christmas. I mean, yes, it does take place during Christmas. There is um, the Christmas weather, the snowy weather, the frozen lake. They do have a few flashbacks showing the various Christmases that he's had with Pork Chop. It ends uh, on Christmas Eve, which feels. Oh, I'll get to that in just a sec. But it takes place on Christmas Eve, ends on Christmas Day. They don't do a lot of the traditional things, which is more what Manny's episode is, all about tradition and changing traditions. But there are a lot of inspiration from classic Christmas stories that are put into this one episode. Like I was saying earlier, you have the It's a Wonderful Life and how one person can make a difference on a town. And you had that with Pork Chop in this episode. You had a little bit of a Christmas Carol with Tiny Tim and his passing and how that affects the main character. And that in this case is Doug, and Pork Chop potentially passing away even has that potential future. You also let's see, there was another one. You could go as far as to say the Grinch, where they have the big feast at the end, because Pork Chop has that big feast with everyone. You could even say that Bill Bluff is kind of the Scrooge of the episode, the money grubbing, inconsiderate person who doesn't want to listen, and Doug is very much Bob Cratchit. So there are a lot of Christmas Story parallels that are within the story. And I think it is very much a Christmas Carol told from Bob Cratchit's perspective, if you really look at it in that perspective. Because A Christmas Carol uh, doesn't really deal a lot with Christmas traditions, but it is a Christmas tradition in and of itself. And even this episode was put as one of the episodes that Skeeter never missed every Christmas on the Disney version. Because you see, and he makes a reference. Oh, I can't believe they did that to that poor dog. So
Yeah, I
even
can't believe they referenced that in there.
so, while it doesn't do a lot of the traditional things, it has drawn a lot of inspiration from Christmas stories. Miracle on 34th Street was the other one I was trying to think of because they take Santa to court and the ruling was on Christmas Eve, which is what happened in this episode. So you've got some of the traditional stories and movies that people love that were very interwoven into the story itself.
All right. Manny, on to you.
There is no Christmas in this episode at all. There's
Liar!
like nah, I lied. There's like from the first frame of this episode, it's all Christmas. It has to do with Doug trying to do a Christmas for his family, himself, and you get to see how everyone spends their Christmas traditions. So much like I said earlier, how he's trying to bring a Christmas for himself because there's no Christmas in his house. He does what he can, rather if it means just having it in his bedroom. So, I mean, he even there's even like a sight gag where he calls in for a radio show or calls in like a radio station to play a Christmas song and it's dedicated to Doug Funny. So it's like just for him to want Christmas magic in his life, that's definitely all the means that he would go to. So I would say the Christmas theme is pretty much throughout this whole episode, even towards the end. So it's kind of all over the place, really.
All right. All right.
Faces all
Now,
over the place.
this this category 4, we've got Sentimental. Now, this one, I want to hear more about how these episodes had made you guys feel when you first saw them and when you watched them again.
Like I mentioned earlier, like I own both of these. I love both of these episodes because they're so different, but yet yet they're kind of the same. The sentimental value I have for this episode is just like I didn't get the serious motions of it when I was a kid because I just was like, I love Doug and this is great. Why is he crying right here? It doesn't make any sense. So I guess my kid brain was sort of like filtering out like the sadness and the realism of it all. So up until I got older, I was like, wow, this one's really, really deep. But there's something really nice about it. And I didn't really get any of the Christmas movie references that you just brought up until just now, Alex, but there is a lot of references in that episode. My sentimental value is it doesn't matter how old you are or how you feel about anything dramatic or sad. This episode right here is just it gives you the sense of warm feelings and sadness at the same time, so it makes you feel emotion. And as for this episode, I got into this one when I was a little older, um, but it's kind of those things where it's like I don't know how I felt about it when I was little versus now, but when I was little, I was like, it's the different Doug. It's very different. This Christmas episode, everything's all happy and silly. But this one hits those emotions when you have to make different traditions and nothing can be the same forever. So if you don't change with it, it feels like you're just living in the past, and it doesn't make you evolve as a person, and it makes you kind of disappointed when things don't hit the same. But if you gradually grow and change with it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think you'll be really happy. And Doug didn't even think that he was going to even make a present for Patty. And when he did that all on his own, I sensed that he felt a lot better it coming from him other than a store. And he felt a lot better giving that money to help Skeeter give a present for his dad. So it sort of teaches your it sort of teaches you on sacrifice and willingness to help others in need.
Now on to you, Alex.
Just to touch on the Disney one for a moment, I have no feelings from when I was a kid because I didn't know it existed. I didn't watch a single episode when I was a kid. I think as a kid, I probably would have preferred the Disney version, just because the feeling is, like you said, the feeling is very different. It's much more jovial. Um, there is a sense of, well, the things aren't just going my way anymore, and why doesn't anyone seem to care? But for the Nickelodeon Doug, I remember this was the only other episode that I felt they're not going to do this. They can't do this. Are you kidding me? Because when Skeeter was going to be moving, I was devastated. It's like, are you're not gonna make him move. You're not gonna make this the last episode with Skeeter, are you? And then they pulled the rug out the end. Oh, he's moving downstairs. Oh, you jackasses. How dare you do that to me? But this episode, I was thinking the whole time, you can't have pork chop in the dog pound? You're not going to do that, are you? Oh, you are. Oh, you're going to go that hard with this. I remember being really even more so upset. And even as a kid, I didn't have any pets as a kid, but I knew the importance of having a best friend, a close friend. And Pork Chop was always the one, along with Doug. And I couldn't believe that they were going to go this dark for Doug of all shows. I could see them doing this for something like Ren and Stimpy and Rocco and some of the other big things with a really dark, twisted edge to make it funny. There's nothing funny about this. And watching it again as an adult, yeah, those feelings really hadn't changed. I was like, I can't believe. I mean, I can understand, especially from a Christmas storytelling standpoint, but still surprised that they went this hard for a Christmas episode on Nickelodeon of all places, in Doug of all places. But does it give the warm, fuzzy feelings? Yes. Uh, in the last 3 minutes of the episode, yes. But is that in true tradition Christmas form? Yes. Watch Prancer and tell me those last 5 minutes are like, oh, finally, something good. Because that happens with a lot of Christmas movies. I mean, Miracle on 34th Street, the whole time the Santa Claus was in jail and they were going to put him in the insane asylum. Yes, I'm talking about the remake. I like the remake better, sue me. But that they do that a lot with Christmas stories, and it really shows a few things. One, does the It's a Wonderful Life thing. It shows the impact that one person can have on a lot of people. and a lot of times we feel that way. Am I making a difference in the people's lives around me? And that's a pretty heavy thing. And to hear and see so many people feel that way about pork chop and like that, and oh yeah, that's true. And then other people started perking up. Oh, he did this. He did this for me. He saved my hair. Things like that. So to see the support after so many awful things and so much backlash, it's a breath of fresh air, and it does make you smile. Going, yeah, see, it makes you do one of two things. Either, yeah, see, you do like him, but then also it makes you go, yeah, see, you're an idiot. Why would you do this to him in the first place? It's one of those two responses. And also to see Doug and Pork Chop reunited at the end and really make you think about what is family. Because we do have our blood given family, and we have our pet family, and we have our chosen family. And sometimes it's a combination of those things. And all of those can be taken out in this one episode, especially at the very, very end, those last few minutes. So, is there a lot to talk about in those last 2, 3 minutes? Yes. Is that the majority of the episode? Heck no. But the same can be said about the Disney version too, because the whole time these traditions are slowly being stripped away from him, and then the last 30 seconds, oh, dirt bike. Everything is better. New traditions, family's important. It's a feeling. So both these episodes really have sentimental value at the end. But again, that's a stereotype of Christmas.
All right. So I'm gonna throw a little curveball for you guys here. I'm gonna go ahead and decide on winners for the first 4 categories, and then allow you guys both to do your last appeal to see which one weighs in more. All right. So for story, I have to say both. It's a tie on that, because it was funny because when first being mentioned about both of these episodes, I was trying to rack my brain, like I said earlier, and I couldn't pinpoint either episode. But when both of you guys were just going through the synopsis and then going back over the story, I was rewatching both of them in my mind. And like the Hannibal Lecter little situation for pork chop, the pork chop with the mug. And so I have to say both stories stuck with me in general, and from your guys's going back over and descriptions. So tie on that. All right. Main character. I'm going to have to go with the Nickelodeon version. OG in that sense, but also just felt like it was more Doug in that sense was in that episode was more kind of caring about others. Disney one, he kind of was a little bit more selfish in the sense where he was like, well, this isn't going my way. This isn't going my way. Exactly. Whereas Nickelodeon, he was worried about pork chop. And that obviously hits home for me with animals. So, okay. Use of the Christmas theme. Disney. I feel that the obvious themes in the Disney one were a lot more prominent, and you could catch it even just by watching a few seconds of it, hearing about it for a few seconds. Whereas the Nickelodeon one, you really have to be thinking about, okay, making the different Christmas movie connections. Like Alex, you did a great job pointing those out and everything.
Most people aren't going to catch that.
But most people aren't going to catch. Yeah. And honestly, like another little connection I thought wasn't necessarily well, I guess it could be considered Christmassy, was Airbud with the dog and going going into the court in regards to the dog and everything. But so then sentimental value tie. Both have really great points on that. Again, for me, the Nickelodeon one with the animals really stuck out, but then also with the traditions for the Disney one and the growing up and having to learn new traditions and experiencing new things. I mean, I'm the baby of the family, so I didn't experience that portion of it. Thankfully,
We all are.
Yeah.
This is a screen full of babies.
all right. So we're the ones that cause the issues,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have this baggage that we choose to unload at a later time.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand Dirt Bike's feeling about having siblings choose name in a sense. But but I think but mine's a little better. I've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to hold on to for that. So but anyways, again, I think both have great sentimental value. And people who watch both of them, either of them, still feel strongly about them, even if they didn't remember until listening to you guys go over it, or just popping it, finding in that old VHS somewhere and a VHS player to pop them in. So I remember those so much. Now, lasting appeal, you guys. Let's see which one can take the lead. And do we want to give it a like time limit for each of you guys to see how you guys could do it? But no, you guys wouldn't be able to keep it in that. I know
We
I
wouldn't be
wouldn't.
able to.
Yeah.
There's no way I
know
could do it in
wouldn't.
time limit. I'd be like, ding, you're done. Oh, crap.
You're
No,
like,
I
my
agree.
episode's better. Time.
I would be the exact same way. So I thought I'd see if I could get that, but no. All right. So I think we are on to Alex. Let's start it off with you.
Well, lasting appeal, this has the advantage of it being Nickelodeon. And that's not a slight at all to the Disney version. The slight to the Disney version is the fact that it's Disney, and that's more on the fans. Nickelodeon is typically the Nickelodeon Doug is typically looked at more favorable among 90s fans. Pretty much. Oh, I don't want to say all unanimously. There are a few people who love it. Like even in just 90s Nickelodeon groups that I'm sorry, not just 90s groups that aren't Nickelodeon, and you post some that in there, and which one of these two do you like? It's almost like 95 Nickelodeon and 5% Disney, and the it will get more replay just on the simple fact that it's Nickelodeon. It started there, um, which is a shame because the Disney version is very, very good. I mean, you've heard the judgments so far. It's neck and neck across the board for quite a few things. So it's a good version. But the Nickelodeon version is the one that people will most often go to simply because it's Nickelodeon. Now, as for the episode itself, is it the one that people are going to want to watch the most during Christmas? That's difficult to say. It depends on your feeling for Christmas. If you like those stories where the character goes through a plight and then ends victorious at the end despite all odds, this fits that description. Doug absolutely does have to fight for his friend, defend his friend, and saves his friend, and then you get that reconciliation at the end, and it's a beautiful ending. And sometimes it's very Don Bluth in that capacity. What are the most awful things I can put these characters through as long as it's a happy ending? And that is goes through a lot of kids movies and TV shows, this episode included. And in that sense, yeah, it's a good ending and it's a good episode. It's and that's I don't have anything else to add because I'm just going to end up talking in circles. So I'll stop there.
All right, the Disney Doug. The lasting appeal for this. I had a weird beginning with this because I didn't watch the Disney Doug when it was on TV. Well, I take that back. I did, but it was much later because I used to subscribe to Disney Adventure magazine. I used to get that all the time. They were really great to see. And I'm like, this is great. Jim Jenkins is doing Doug, but where can I find it? I don't know when it's on or it's not even advertised. So I saw this at Walmart and I begged my parents to get this for me. And they're like, no, you already have Doug at home. I'm like, no, it's a new Doug. Sure it is. It's almost like where it's like we have McDonald's at home, you know, it's that sort of talk, you know. So I got it for Christmas. I got this for Christmas. And I was so I was so happy when I got this. So I popped it in the VCR and I watched it. I have nothing but really great memories of this because now I have two Dougs to watch, like one that's incredibly serious and deep, and one is just like you could just put this on no matter what. You could be, I don't know, doing homework, you could be decorating the tree or making breakfast or something, and just watch this at any time and just throw it on because it just gives you that really great feeling where it's like you're just watching something, you know. I'm not saying it's mindless entertainment or anything, but you can pick it up. You don't have to really pay attention to it. You can just put it on. You can also, like I mentioned earlier, you get to see Doug's different personality as he learns how to appreciate other traditions. And I give a lot of credit to this episode too, because I watched this episode in a transitional time of my life as well, because my life was changing at the same time. My parents were going through a divorce at the time, and I sort of didn't know how to take it. But mentally, I try to be like Doug in this scenario and just roll with it and just see what happens because it's not that bad. And it sort of gives you that really nice feeling of going with different traditions, learning how to take change, and, you know, just be happy that, you know, you're still alive. So that's all I really have to say about this episode. Really touching, personally.
Well, before we get our final verdict on lasting appeal, we are going to segue, because we're so smooth with them, into our commercial break. We've got more to talk about. We got to hear what April says. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Doug will return in a moment.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Splat Attack. If you are enjoying this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe, make sure to hit that notification bell to never miss what we are up to next. If you are listening on a podcast app, please leave us a review. Any star is appreciated. These small acts will help others find us. Thank you, and we love you. Merry Christmas!
If you like what you're watching and like to dive in more, head over to patreon.com/splatattack. We have exclusive mini episodes every Friday. Not only that, Slime streams twice a month, early access, and bonus footage. Head over to patreon.com/splatattack.
With the holidays right around the corner, what's a better stocking stuffer than a Splat Attack shirt or mug? Head over to bonfire.com/store/Splat Attack store with hyphens in between to get all these really cool stuff for that 90s nostalgic person in your life. Again, bonfire.com/store/Splat Attack store with hyphens in between.
Tune in next time, Slimesters, as we dive into the early days and odd corners of Nickelodeon's stratosphere with our top 5 Nickelodeon syndicated shows. Do you remember what Nick used to show back in the day? You don't want to miss this. You can catch all the retrorific action right here on Splat Attack.
You're watching Nickelodeon. And now back to Doug.
We have returned, all Christmassy, and all the dogs are safe, and Dirt Bike is changed, and we're very excited about why Dirt Bike. Anyway, April, what is how are we looking for the final verdict?
All right. So you both gave great representations of each of these episodes. And with just the Christmassy spirit, I'm gonna kind of do things a little different with this lasting appeal here. So the Nickelodeon one, for me personally, probably had the most lasting appeal because of the fact that it was in regards to an animal, and I am very partial to anything when an animal is involved. And that one is one that, like I said earlier, still can see in my mind, like go like it's like I was watching it while Alex was going over everything with it. However, because of how things are and how Christmassy feels, I'm gonna probably have to go with the Disney one as the winner for the lasting appeal, and having the Christmas feelings inside. Very Christmassy episode. It had a lot to talk about, the traditions, the different traditions that people go through, the fact that there's people in other countries that have different ways of celebrating also, with like this is Halloween. Well, wait, Halloween's the bunnies hiding the eggs. And so just kind of being able to encompass a lot more, uh that kind of honestly was probably what won me over. I was trying to be as impartial as I could, because of course, like I said, I I love animals, and the Nickelodeon one still cuts me deep to this day. And
Definitely.
I don't blame you. Of the two, I would watch the one that's more happy.
exactly. Exactly. Like you're saying, Manny, the Disney one is one you can just throw on. You don't have to sit and watch it and let yourself get all super down and invested, I guess, in a sense. It's more of the
Just throw
easygoing,
on and just
just easygoing, let it play. You could even replay it a couple of times to catch the sections that you missed throughout. Whereas the Nickelodeon one is one where if you want to watch it like every year, you can only watch it the one time, and then you have to move on because you want the feelings from that, but you can't like keep yourself down in that emotional state. So I believe that brings it down to Disney being the winner, the Disney Doug.
Congratulations!
thank you so much. Thank you. But it's not a slight, as both of these episodes are fantastic. I loved them for years. But thank you so much.
Well, before we end our episode, we've got a quick segment for all of you. And Manny, what is our segment for the episode?
Our segment is This or That. This or That is the topic that we're going to be playing.
This or that, this or that. Time to play this or that. All right, so for this or that, it's pretty self-explanatory, April. Manny is going to give us two topics, and then you just pick one. Which one do you prefer? And much like the verses, you can choose both if you would prefer both.
So, for the first one, who would you want as a neighbor? Mr. Bone or Mr. Bluff?
Probably Mr. Bluff.
Manny, what would you say?
I would say Mr. Bone. I think he'd be really fun to mess around with.
But with like Mr. Bluff being, because wasn't he kind of more? He was more rich, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, so you could sneak into his backyard and use whatever he's got and everything.
His jacuzzi or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, so yeah, you would know when he's there. So,
especially if you make friends with BB, because BB wasn't a bad person, and that was something that we talked about. I'll save that for later in a future episode. We talk about BB in a future episode, folks. But BB was not a bad person. If you can get in good with BB, you can go over to his place all the flipping time and check out all these really cool things that Mr. Dink wishes he could have.
Very expensive.
Not only that, but like just wait until high school and everything. I mean, it's the rich parents are the ones that let the kids usually throw the biggest parties and everything. And
man.
I mean, and you wouldn't even have to get in trouble because if the cops were called, you just run home. You're right next door. Like
hell, he'll just write a check. It's like it's like nothing happened.
Yeah.
I changed my answer, Mr. Bluff.
But the reason, another major reason why I would not choose Mr. Bone, I do not want to live next door to someone who practices yodeling outside of his back window loudly.
Nope.
No, thank you. Take your lederhosen and go to your little recording studio.
Well, that's a fun. How do you do?
We have a Nerf gun and then just have like aiming practice.
Have a Nerf war in a huge mansion.
Yeah. Well, or like while he's yodeling, like see if you could like hit his throat or something, or get into his mouth.
Yodeling. This is going on your permanent record. Oh no, broke Manny again.
Number 2, who would you trust with inventing something for you? Mr. Dink or Al and Moo?
Dink, things always went wrong. Al and Moo, they worked like they were supposed to. You just user error. The smoke bomb muffin worked. Dude just happened to eat it.
Yeah, I was gonna say Alamu, because that worked, and it's. I mean, okay, like it's not their fault that the guy decided to eat it, and
that's true. Because what are you gonna do when you have a cupcake? So, how long was he gonna just sit there looking at it? So it was bound to happen.
Do you imagine taking a bite of a cupcake and it explodes in your face? In your face, and it just rolls out of your mouth? Like, you would gag on that. And
you would! Have you smelled smoke bombs? Disgusting!
That's like smoking 3 packs of cigarettes all at once and just went straight into your lungs, and you're exuding it all out.
And the last one, it could just be a tie. Do you prefer? I
purr all the time. Especially when I get my back scratched.
Do you prefer Thanksgiving or Christmas?
Ooh, probably. I'm gonna probably have to go with Christmas. It's I liked, especially like growing up, it was a lot more like gathering with family and everything. And sometimes we would have white Christmases back home, and so we'd be able to play in the snow. And it was also nice because with the Christmas, you got like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks off of school. Thanksgiving, you were given 3 days. Well, we were only given 3 days. We were given Wednesday through Friday. But yeah, so I think I would have to honestly go with Christmas as opposed to Thanksgiving.
I choose Thanksgiving. It's not that I'm a Scrooge or anything like that. I just feel like Working 18 years in retail sort of does this to you. You sort of do get sick of Christmas after a while, but just the hustle and bustle of it all, and sometimes you just want to just relax. But I see nothing wrong with Christmas. I just like Thanksgiving better. I like the food. I like the setting of the table and just eating and just throwing jokes every now and then with not a lot of pressure of like, oh, did I get the right gift, or I don't know if I set this up the right way or whatever. So yeah, just freewheeling, and pumpkins and leaves are cool. So
for me, there is only one answer. Christmas is the right answer. That is my absolute favorite holiday, period. There's a reason I have 6 Christmas trees in my house. I freaking love Christmas. I could live in Christmas all year long if my family and boss would let me do it.
You made, and I hope you put this in here, you made that awesome gingerbread house display. And you decorated your house so beautifully, dude. You did amazing.
Well, that is going to be it for our very lengthy Doug episode battle, but it was a lot of fun, and it was really cool to see Disney Doug get a lot more attention. That it honestly, check it out, guys. Please go check it out. Give it a fair shot. But with that being said, we have our closing question for the episode for all of you Slimesters, which is, do you have any holiday traditions that you do, or some that you have just started? You can write to us via email at splatattack2021@gmail.com. You can DM us on all of our socials. Just look for @SplatAttackPodcast. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, do that. Be our Christmas present, please. Ding, ding. Happy Hanukkah. Interact with us wherever you can. We're always happy to hear from you guys. With that being said, thank you again, April, for joining us for this episode. It was such a blast having you. I've always loved getting the chance to talk with you, and it was great to reconnect with you again.
Great to meet you, too. It was a pleasure.
It was great to see you guys be on here again. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Definitely needed it after this crazy week and everything. So thank you guys again so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It is our pleasure. Until next time, Manny, will you help me close up the studio, please? I think that self-decorator that Mr. Dink gave us is going haywire.
Aye, aye, co-captain. But don't forget, we have the remote right here. It's very expensive. All I have to do is move this thing and... beautiful.
Wait. Really? Nothing horrible happened? It actually worked?
Of course. What bad things ever happened here in the studio?
Right. Well, happy holidays to all of you Slimesters.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
This episode was recorded at Splat Attack Studios, in virtual home studios, though none in Florida.